Well, it quit snowing for a while, so I'll get out here and see if I can't get something done today. Well, we were busy yesterday. Judy had a housewarming party for a friend of hers, and then we had a conference call with her surgeon for her leg, and then she had physical therapy yesterday afternoon, so that took up pretty much most of the day. The day was pretty wild anyway. It was blowing and raining pretty hard. Judy's still staying in her friend's house, Kelly, and Kelly has gone up to Anchorage to orthopedic surgeon up there about her back. So I've been over at Kelly's house with Judy, helping her out there. It's right on the water, and we spent a good portion of the day yesterday watching out the window. It must have been gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour. It was picking up water off the narrows out there, big waves, of course, and white water from the waves, and it was just picking up water off the water spouts off the water. It was kind of fun to watch, especially since we were inside and didn't have to be out in it. Well, the day before I came out here and started setting up here for a new set of handrails for the porch out here, coming up the porch. And I went out and dug this piece of metal out. Several years ago, they put a new floor in the high school gymnasium and new bleachers in there, and this is part of the old bleacher set here, and I had it stuck up in a pile up here. I thought this would be just perfect for a handrail going up and down here. So I'm going to set it up. I had some 6-inch wide 3/16 plate, and I was trying to cut it into a 4.5-inch diameter circle to put for a base down here. Well, my little drill press just wouldn't handle it. I was trying to figure out something else to do. I got to looking around, and I found some 3-inch by 6-inch pieces of that same material that I'd sheared off a few years ago that was sitting in the shop. So I've cleaned that up, the rust off of it, and that'll make a pretty good base here. So now I've got this piece out. I've got a square here so I can cut these off, the ends here off square, so my post will be 90 degrees. And then I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do for a post here. Set this up the height that I wanted. I'm going to want this probably 34 inches, this top rail 34 inches above the steps. That's what code is, 34 to 36. And since this is pretty shallow steps here, standard step is 7-inch rise and 11-inch run. And I built these. See, these got a 5 3/4 inch rise. And it's a 11-inch or 10-inch run, 11-inch run. Well, I built those pretty shallow so that they were easy to get up for somebody that was not able to function 100%, could still walk but couldn't get, make it easier for them to get up and down the steps. So that's pretty good. Well, anyway, that's what I'm doing here. I've got these plates just cleaned up. And now I've got to figure out what I'm going to use for a base for them and get that cleaned up and welded on there. So we'll have a little bit of cutting and welding and grinding and drilling and all kinds of fun if I can get my drill press to work again. I kind of overheated the motor on it trying to make those 4.5-inch circles plates. So the weather's pretty nice for a while now. I'm going to take advantage of it while I can out here and see. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do to mount that, set that up right. I was going to cut those ends off at an angle to match the slope of the stairs and weld on pipe onto them with foots on them to bolt into the staircase. I got to looking at it, and this end, one end already has a great big bar welded on there where it was attached either to the wall of the gymnasium or some structure in the bleachers, I don't know which, I got to thinking about it, and I decided if I cut that off at the angle and weld that onto that lower bar, then I can just take that bar there, the flat piece, and bolt it into one of the uprights that's on the porch already. I would bolt that in and make that pretty stable. And then this other end, let's see what I'm going to do on it. I'm still not sure on it what I'm going to do on it, but that puts the long side of that on the top, and I can cut that lower one back at an angle, maybe plug that hole a little bit or something, cut some of this bracing out from in the middle of it, and then heat that up and bend that into a nice arc so it's got a nice curve to it to grab onto. That's what I'm thinking I'm going to do now. So we'll see how this turns out. I got the first part of it pretty well figured. I've got that cut out there so I can bend that. I'll go get a torch and heat that up. But first I'm going to get a wire brush and clean that all up and prep that all up for welding. I got a wire brush and went over that end down there. So I'm going to heat that up and see if I can bend that over. And I've just got a little propane bottle. My oxyacetylene setup is just too awkward to try to pull over here. The cart that it's on, the wheels are all boogered up on it, and it doesn't hardly roll, so it's a pain in the butt to try to move. So I'm pretty sure I can heat it up. It'll take a little bit with this propane torch, but should work. Well, that's going to work eventually, but that's taking a long time. I've got it to go from blue to silver and starting on straw. It'll be a while before I get it up to red hot, let alone cherry red. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I just didn't want to move everything over to the shop rather than move my oxyacetylene, and then my welder is over there anyway, so I just take these sawhorses and stuff over to the shop and move everything over there and set it up. And it won't take very long to heat that up and bend it with the oxyacetylene set. Well, that went a lot faster than trying to use that torch, but I need to open this gap up just a little bit more here so that they can get this bend just a little. Otherwise, looking pretty good. That's going to fit just perfect down here on this end. So I'll go get my grinder and grind that out just a touch more. Good. We'll try that now. Alright, so that side's ready to be welded up. I had to put a little bit of heat on one of this diagonal here to get it to come over. But that come over and made it up pretty good. Yeah, that looks good. Now the welder's right here, so I can just go ahead and weld those up. But I don't have my welding helmet or anything here, so I'll have to go get it and bring it down here. It's up in the basement, and still got to figure out what I'm going to do with this end here. I think before I do anything with this end, I'm going to go ahead and take it back over to the hanger. I don't like using that grinder in here for cutting. I'm going to cut this off probably back here, even with this angle here, and then I'll probably cut this off. Cut it off up here and maybe bend it back up in here, and then I'll take this and bend it down right in here a little bit and maybe tie this back into it. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. So then that end there I can bolt into the 6x6 post on the porch, and then on this end here, somewhere along in here, I'm going to have to make a post to weld in underneath here, weld in here to go attach down to the stair rail, or to the stairs I mean. So that's looking pretty good. Getting an idea of what I'm doing anyway. So that's going to be about it for today. I got to go figure out what I'm going to fix for supper for my wife. I've only been gone a couple hours, but I don't like her to leave her alone too long. We're getting this figured out. Well, I just got out here to work on this again. Afternoon on the 19th, my little brother's birthday. It's a nasty day out today. It's raining, mixed rain and snow. It's a little chilly, but not bad. It's not freezing anyway. Snow's not sticking, it's mostly rain. I just tacked that bar up there on that end that I cleaned up yesterday. Now I gotta go out and maybe put it on the post and see how it looks and try to figure out what I'm going to do with this end down here. I was kind of tentatively laying it out where I was going to bend it and what I'm going to do with it, but I'm still not sure yet. This is kind of a build on the fly thing, which is my typical modus operandi. Well, anyway, I'm going to take that out, set it up on the porch, and see where we go from there. The rain kind of let up for a minute. I thought I could get away with it, but it looks like it's coming back again. Well, Kat's been here all by herself for a couple days. She's getting kind of lonely. Well, anyway, I brought that rail out here to kind of lay it out. I've got to try to figure out where I'm going to anchor it down at the bottom. So I've got it anchored up on that post, and that looks like that's going to work out pretty good. I might have to heat that plate up a little bit and bend it a little bit more, but otherwise that looks pretty good. I had an angle figured out down there on the bottom, kind of tentatively, of where I was going to put it, and that kind of looks like it's going to work out okay. I'm going to cut that lower rail off just a little bit. I'll cut that diagonal out of there, or at least cut it back and then move it back and straighten it out, and then I'll try to see if I can't bend that top rail down, and then I'll have to make something to tie into that bottom there. Well, anyway, I better go put the camera away. It's starting to rain again. Well, I did a little heating and straightening of this plate down here on this end. It was kind of twisted and, well, it got pulled out a little bit from the heat from doing a tack weld on those. And then it was also bent a little bit. It looked like maybe it had been pulled from the bolts. Anyway, I heated that up and straightened it out. I was just using my cutting torch. I can't find my rosebud. I got this side laid out where I want to cut. I want to do a little angle cut on this bottom rail, and then I'm going to take this diagonal and cut it off from this top rail, and I'm going to heat up this top rail here and try bending it down. And then once I get it bent down at the right angle, then I'll see if I can find a piece to weld on it to come down for a foot on that. So there's a weld right here on this diagonal that I can cut out, and this is going to be cut back here someplace. I'll have to measure and see how long I need that before it can go back up here and tie back into this top rail. But anyhow, I got it warmed up in here a little bit. I got fire going in the stove, so I can take some of my clothes off. There's my rosebud. Okay, that'll be better. I'm going to change over to the rosebud. Oh, I got to go find a pipe or a piece of steel large enough to fit inside of here to use as a lever for bending this down. So I'm going to change over to my rosebud, and anyway, we'll find a piece of metal for a lever on that. Well, that wasn't so hard. Instead of finding a piece of pipe or rod that would fit inside of that pipe, I found one that fit over the outside of it, and that actually might be better. I also got my rosebud hooked up, so let's see what we can do here. Well, I think that'll do it. That lines up pretty good. I've got the cut here lined up with the angle that I wanted, and so that brings that down to where it matches up pretty good. Now what I need to do is find a piece that will fit inside of that one that I can slide in there, weld in, and then I can slip this piece over that and weld it on and cut it off to length here to weld my plate on the bottom. So originally had this set up, and I bent this diagonal over here flush up against where the angle was going to be on there, and that would have acted as a fulcrum to pull that down there. But then I realized that the outside of this band stretches, but the inside of it buckles. So making a bend that sharp on there would have put a buckle in this thing. And I've got it pretty well rounded. Pretty well rounded. There's a little bit bulge in there, but not too bad. Not considering that's going to look pretty good, I think. So yeah, and this is a piece of the same size pipe. I can weld that right on there, figure out how long I need it, and weld one of those plates onto it, and that'll bolt right onto the stair step. Now I'll just need to clean that up with a wire wheel. Find, like I said, a pipe that'll fit inside that one. Alright, what I got is a piece of tubing. I hate using this because it's 4130. It's something I got for repairing airplane fuselages, but it'll work. And it's a little too small diameter out OD to do a good job of fitting in there, but it'll work. All it is a sleeve in there. So now I'm going to cut that off, and then I'll trim this up and slide that other piece on there and cut it and weld them together. Alright, both these pieces I got over here that I was going to put on there to extend that out are 4130. So I've got some of this stuff over in the hangar. I'll go grab a piece of that. I don't want to use a 4130 on this. This piece should work. Piece I cut off before when I was making some sawhorses or workhorses. It's got tabs welded here on the end of it. I can grind those off. That'll work. That'll work good. Oops, screwed that up. Now I put it on there, now I can't get it off. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this over by the on the wheel grinder and clean this end up and bevel that edge. Before we weld on it, gas can over here underneath the grinder. I suppose I better move it out of the way. I cleaned off the spot for the ground, and then I didn't ever put it on there. Should work better. Alright, that's all welded up, both ends of it now. It ain't pretty, but it's functional. So now I'll take it out to the hanger and I'll go over it with a wire brush and clean all the rust and stuff off of it and get the welds cleaned up. It's too dark to go out and mount that up on the steps now, and it's pouring down rain, and it just started pouring down rain. Anyway, it's too dark out there to do anything out there now, so I'll have to wait till the morning tomorrow to do that. Next step is to go ahead and mount it up again onto the post and then figure out where that foot's going to be on this end. But I think that looks pretty good. Okay, well, that's it for tonight here. After I got done welding on that handrail yesterday afternoon, I took it over to the hangar to wire brush it and get it cleaned up. It was raining outside, so I really didn't want to be out there much setting it up on the porch, but I just did a quick dry fit on it. And I thought that piece that I welded on to go down to the floor to support it, the foot on it, I thought that pipe that I welded on there was going to be too long and I was going to have to measure it out and cut it off. But when I dry fitted it on there, it's just exactly perfect, which was kind of a problem because the bottom of that tube was pretty well ate up with rust. It's got some pretty good pits in it and stuff, and I'm not sure how it would weld down to this plate that I'm using for the base. So I went out over here and I got one of that tube that I've slipped inside of them when I welded them together, a piece of 4130 tubing. I took it up to the basement, trued it up on the end, on the one end, and then brought it down here and I cut about 3.5, 4 inches off to use for a socket to put up in that tube on the end of it. I'm going to weld that down here to the plate, and then I'll go get that handrail and bring it over here and weld this foot onto that down leg. Well, I've got it all prepped up now. I just punched 1/4-inch holes in that plate to put bolts in to bolt it down to the steps. Scratched it up a little bit with a grinding wheel to get all the rust off of it, even more than what I got off with the wire wheel. And it's ready to go, so tack that on there, weld that on there. Now what I've got to do is cut these tabs off that were welded on here and then polish up where the welds were on there. Get this polished up a little bit. I'm going to grind down a couple of these welds here where I got them a little too big, where they're sticking out. But otherwise, and I got one more thing I've got to do. This is going to bolt up to the post on the porch. It's already got holes in it where it was bolted up to whatever it was before, but these are about 1/2-inch holes, and they're way too big for what screws that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the Timberlock screws, and they're 1/4 inch in diameter, so these holes are way too big for that. So before I grind this down, I've got some steel rod. Actually, let's see if this might work here. Oh yeah, that'll work. That'll work. So I'll take this and fill in this hole here, weld that hole up, and then I'm going to have to drill this out in a couple of spots for some 1/4 inch bolts. So I got this is pretty rusty. I'll put it on the wire wheel over here and clean it up. Weld that in there and then cut it off and smooth it up, and weld new hole or drill new holes. All right, that'll work. Back over into the hanger now for some remedial grinding, and might touch it with the wire brush just one more time and wipe it down with some paint thinner, and then it's going to be ready for some paint. Well, I took that over to the hanger and went over it with a wire brush again, got the slag and stuff off from the welding, and then touched up any rust that I could see that showed up. And I took a grinding wheel and ground down the high spots there, back here on this end where it's going to butt up against the... Geez, the wind is blowing pretty good here now. It's been blowing all day, but it's picking up. We usually don't get it out here like this, so must be really howling down the narrows. Anyway, I got this end down here ground off where I put those plugs in the holes and got that ground down flush, and down there on the other end where those tabs were sticking out, and then where I made that joint with the welds for that leg down there, ground it down smooth. That's any place where the hand was going to go or anything. Then wiped it down real good with some paint thinner. Oh, now I got to wait for the paint thinner to flash off, and I'll wait for that stuff to kind of come up to ambient temperature. I got a fire going here in the wood stove, and it's nice and warm in here in the shop. It is 70 some degrees in here. Anyway, we'll wait for that to warm up. I'll get the paint cans out and stick those up where they'll get warmed up, and then we'll start squirting some paint on that. I got the first coat of paint on it. It's nice and warm in here in the shop, so it should dry pretty good. Of course, the fire's going out in a couple, 3 or 4 hours. But anyway, first coat of paint's on there. It's going to take 2 or 3 coats on to get it covered real good. You can see through it in places, well, everywhere. You can see through it, the old paint and stuff. But it's going to look pretty good, I think. So I'm going to let that sit here overnight, dry overnight, and then I'll come back out tomorrow, work on it again a little bit. Well, that's looking pretty good if I do say so myself, and I do say so myself. Put 1 coat of paint on that last night, left it in here to dry overnight. And I just came out a little bit ago, got a fire going in the stove, and put a 2nd coat of paint on it. That's looking pretty good. Well, I've got that setting on the sawhorses with some garbage sacks over them so they don't get all painted up. And then I just stood those off on a couple of nuts. I think they're like 3/8 or 7/16 inch nuts that I put underneath each one of those legs to hold them up off of the plastic so they don't get stuck down to it. Well, now I got to let this side cure, and then I can turn it over and do the other side. That's the longest part of building something, is waiting for the paint to dry.
Metal sitting someplace. What was that for?
This is some of that stuff we got from the bleachers.
Oh, okay.
Back up the hill.
That the little girl something? Huh. Oh, that little rooster flew up there. Funny.
Yep.
Yep. Let's see. Up with the bad.
No, it's down the hill.
Up with the good. Yeah. Oh, nice. No, I'm trying to do every step. That's wrong.
The deluge that liked to drown me this morning when I was doing my morning chores let off into just a little fog and drizzle. So I decided to go ahead and put that handrail up. Had to go to town and get some screws to hold that down with. I got some 2.5-inch Timberlock screws. Picked Judy up, took her to town for a little outing while I went to the hardware store and the post office, and decided to go ahead and bring her out here so she could see this. She had tried it out for the first time. She's upstairs now. She tried out the handrail for both the stairs and the steps out here. She was happy with them, so I'm going to let her rest a little bit, and then I'll bring her back downstairs. We'll go for a little drive out in the country and take the dogs for their evening run. She was happy with the handrail, so there it is. I had to do some repairs on these steps. Somebody when they run the Bobcat in here into the granary to unload the grain, somebody who's not me, has hit the steps a couple times and broken that runners up on that. So I'm going to have to fix those. We got them cobbled together now, so they're good enough, but when the weather dries out, I'm going to have to find some 2x12, yellow cedar 2x12s to make new runners for that. So anyway, Judy's not ready to come out here yet, but we got her first time back home since she's been hurt. So I'll get everything put away and give her a chance to get rested up, and then I'll help her down the stairs. But that project is done. The stair rail is done. It's all mounted up. It feels pretty good. Well, that turned out pretty good for a piece of scrap metal that was laying up in the tulies.